The moment someone points out that you are quiet in a room full of people, usually the loud ones, there's always that brief pause where you consider explaining yourself. Then you decide not to. You give a small smile, maybe a slight shrug, and return to observing the room, because whatever is unfolding around you feels far more interesting than trying to justify your silence to someone who probably would not understand it anyway. What most people fail to realize is that quietness is not simply a personality quirk. There is a deeper psychology behind it, one that is often misunderstood. People tend to assume that quiet individuals are just less confident, less socially skilled, or somehow waiting to come out of their shell. Society treats silence as if it were a problem that needs encouragement, correction, or fixing. But that assumption misses the point entirely. Psychologist Jerome Kagan, a researcher at Harvard, spent years studying infant temperament. He identified a group of children he described as high reactive. These infants responded intensely to unfamiliar stimuli, a new sound, a new face, or a new environment, overwhelmed them more easily than it did other children. They cried harder, reacted faster, and processed sensory information more deeply. As Kagan followed them into adolescence and adulthood, a pattern emerged. Many of these children grew into quieter, more inward people. Not because they lacked social ability, but because their nervous systems were wired differently. They absorbed more from the world around them. Emotionally, mentally, and sensory-wise, they experienced life at a much higher intensity. For someone like that, an ordinary room is never just a room. It is layers of voices, shifting expressions, emotional undercurrents, interruptions, background noise, social tension, and countless subtle details happening all at once. So when you see a quiet person sitting silently at a gathering, they may not be disengaged at all. In many cases, they are simply processing the room at a level of depth most people never notice. The problem is that the modern world rewards output more than awareness. Quick responses are valued more than thoughtful ones. People who speak often are perceived as confident, while people who pause before speaking are often mistaken for distant, awkward, or uninvolved. Silence makes people uncomfortable, so society trains everyone to fill it as quickly as possible. Quiet people live in the space between observation and expression. They spend enormous energy deciding which thoughts are actually worth saying aloud. And inside that space exists an entire unseen world. Many quiet people are deeply funny, for example, but their humor often remains invisible. They think of the perfect response seconds too late, or choose not to interrupt the flow of conversation just to insert it. The thought stays in their head, fully formed, with nowhere to go. Hours later, they might text it to one close friend, who suddenly realizes how sharp and unexpectedly hilarious they really are. There is a unique kind of loneliness in constantly having thoughts that never reach the room. Over time, quiet people also absorb a subtle but persistent message from the world around them. Teachers mention it in report cards, parents worry about it gently, relatives treat it like a puzzle to solve during family gatherings. Why are you so quiet? The question sounds harmless, but repeated enough times, it teaches someone that their natural state is somehow wrong. Eventually, many quiet people stop being merely quiet and become private. Those two things are not the same. Quietness is simply a way of interacting with the world. Privacy, however, is often a form of protection. It develops after enough experiences where thoughts, emotions, or vulnerabilities were treated like curiosities instead of something genuinely worth understanding. What few people notice is that quiet individuals are often the most attentive people in the room. They are not half listening while preparing their next sentence. They are actually paying attention. They notice contradictions. They remember details. They hear changes in tone. They catch the hesitation in your voice when you briefly avoid a certain topic. They observe what others overlook because they are too busy waiting for their turn to speak. In meetings, quiet people often identify the core issue long before anyone else. While others continue circling around the discussion, they have already understood the real problem and the simplest solution. But many stay silent because the environment does not truly invite depth. It rewards performance instead. Ironically, the people who listen most carefully are often described as distant. Yet when a quiet person finally decides to speak, their words tend to carry unusual weight. Not always, but often enough that others notice it immediately. That is because those words have usually been examined internally long before they were spoken aloud. Quiet people often rehearse ideas, test meanings, and refine thoughts privately before expressing them. There is precision in the way they communicate, and precision has become rare in a culture built on constant reaction. Getting close to a quiet person also requires patience. In the early stages of relationships, they are often painfully aware of the distance between what others see and who they actually are. They want to close that gap, but opening up too quickly can feel unnatural, even unsafe. As a result, only a small number of people are ever allowed fully into their inner world, and they know exactly who those people are. Usually they can count them on one hand. When quiet people form deep connections, they hold on to them intensely. Part of it is loyalty, part of it is relief. Relief that someone finally saw beyond the silence and stayed long enough to understand what existed underneath it. Their emotional life also tends to unfold internally rather than outwardly. Grief, frustration, loneliness, even joy often settle quietly inside them instead of being immediately expressed. Emotions are processed slowly, like sediment sinking through water. This is why even the people closest to them may not fully understand what they are carrying. Not because they are hiding it deliberately, but because inner experiences do not always translate cleanly into language. After enough failed attempts at explaining themselves, many quiet people simply stop trying to put every feeling into words. They become accustomed to carrying entire emotional landscapes silently. This is not exactly shyness, although shyness can exist alongside it. It is something deeper, a fundamentally different relationship with language itself. For quiet people, words matter. Saying something meaningless just to fill silence can feel deeply uncomfortable. They genuinely do not understand why so many conversations are built around speaking without substance. And maybe that reveals something important. There are two very different ways of moving through social life, yet society has decided that only one of them is normal. Loudness became the standard. Quiet people have spent much of their lives being measured against it. But quiet people are not unfinished versions of louder people. They are not waiting to become more talkative. Most of them are already living in constant internal motion, reflecting, observing, analyzing, remembering, feeling. From the outside, it may look like nothing is happening. Inside, entire conversations are unfolding. So the next time you are around someone who does not say much, resist the urge to fill the silence immediately. Do not treat it like a flaw that needs correction. Just stay there for a moment. Let the silence exist. They will notice that you did. Quiet people always do.